All right, so Zoom has hopefully warned you all that you're being recorded, so speak freely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. That is a great looking group of people in attendance. Should have a relatively quick and short agenda for you here today. I don't see anybody new. It looks like everybody here has attended previously, so would like to actually welcome you real quick. We did add East Central Dispatch yesterday as well. So we're working with St. Louis City. So kind of excited. We're pretty close to blanketing the area on dispatches, especially St. Louis County. We're getting pretty close. So it's exciting. I wanted to give a kudos to Webster Groves. They ended up running one of our STARS kiddos there last week, and then followed up with a visit with mom. She came up and met them at the house just to kind of update them on changes that the kiddo had gone through over actually kind of the years since we originally put the kid in. And then she was super worried because she was headed out of town and leaving the kid with relatives there. And but they, between the communication and the meeting, and then mom wrote everybody on her way out of town and just said, you know, a huge thank you to everybody. So I know sometimes it's the little things compared to some of the big calls we run and the things we do for our patients, but it is always a reminder that, you know, it's kind of nice that peace of mind that we can help provide to our families and our parents, both just from having trained EMS personnel available, but then also as we continue to try and make sure we're educated on what to do, especially for some of these kiddos. I do have just a quick call review here. Nothing, you know, crazy, but just to kind of reiterate some of the themes that we're seeing. So this was a seizure call that occurred last month. Classically 3 in the morning, right? So just when your brain is about at its cognitive sharpest. And you can see kind of the history on the patient. Did have a history of hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, had previous seizures, and a long history of respiratory challenges and decompensation. They did find, you know, as far as you can see the basic assessment there, airway was patent, good cap refill. I think breathing was adequate, normal respirations you can see there. However, the kid was found in status. Initial set of vital signs. Now, I only threw their initial ones up, but they did have repeat vital signs, unlike some other trends you get to hear me talk about sometimes. So good vital signs throughout. Blood pressure is a little bit there for a 1-year-old, but pretty close to acceptable. Sorry, just there's my screen, and a little bit of run in the temp. We did have some crackles in both lung fields, in addition to actively seizing, so whether aspiration or our kids' chronic respiratory problems. They actually just continued oxygen. This was a kiddo who was on oxygen all the time. They did end up administering 1 dose of Versed with cessation of seizures. They did note it was a STARS patient. I know this is a little thing, but it really is awesome for us, for the agencies that track this, and for kudos to them. This was a SCAD call, so just the ability as we continue to try and do QI, QA, and look backwards at trips and how they went and what we can do to improve. Just the fact that this agency can quickly run a list of treatments and we can see where the STARS kiddos were run. That's awesome. And then called medical control. So you can see just out of their narrative, did first of all something that once again we love to see, but just noting that the kid was in STARS. Kind of, you can see this family was calling the seizure action plan. They weren't particularly, you know, being mean or anything by letting the kids sit there and seize for an hour. They were trying to follow the steps, but unfortunately the kid remained in status. We did get a good weight here on the kiddo, and the dose of the Versed was commensurate with the weight for that route. So all good stuff. And then just another thing that we kind of started last year, but everybody loves to see is, you know, how did you actually restrain and safely transport that kiddo? And so just all good notes there. So I just thought it was a pretty solid trip sheet, well written, and good care for the kiddo. So we certainly appreciate that crew bringing him in. I will say one of the trends to talk about Something that I don't know if we can put numbers on it to call it statistically increasing yet, but definitely anecdotally, we are experiencing lots of our complex kids or our challenging kiddos heading home into foster, and including that was something that this patient was placed in a foster home. Some things I think I talked briefly about this last meeting, but some unfortunate challenges of that as we're learning is foster families are not always given good background history on some of the medical fosters that they're taking into their home. And so we're seeing some who are actually just thankful to have a form because they don't actually even know what to communicate to your crews always as far as the kid's background. So I hope we get a better handle on this, but for now, you may actually see where they're either reading the information straight from the STARS form to you, or they're using that as sort of a substitute medical history. So hopefully maybe a little bit more to come on that. I did have one brief room for improvement. I'm not going to really delve into the call too far, other than the broad strokes are we had a kid also placed in a long-term facility that probably wasn't prepared to deal with trach patients or wasn't super trained in that. And kid was in some respiratory difficulty. They shipped to the local critical access hospital. So it seems pretty evident from all the documentation that it's very likely this kid was decannulated from the get-go, and fortunately had enough intrinsic respiratory ability to maintain. But we had the long-term care facility miss it. We had a 911 crew miss it in transport to the critical access hospital, and then that kid was transferred by yet another EMS entity all the way to St. Louis, and with it also decannulated. And for full disclosure, it seemed like maybe it was missed for a few minutes in our ED as well. So I know it's a simple thing, but and I'm preaching to a choir here that's already on top of this and understands this very well. But if we can just continue to remind people that there is training available, it is free, it is online. The first thing you do when you meet a trach patient is please, just inspect for them and maybe make sure they have a pulse. But in that process, you can very quickly look and make sure that they have not decannulated, that their tracheostomy tube is actually in their stoma. It's such a simple thing, but really for people who have never been exposed to that concept, unfortunately, we continue to see some misses, every year. So please, like I said, I'm not yelling at anybody in this room. I know you guys all got it, but if you're talking to crews at conferences or trainings or other places and they seem to have no familiarity, like we will give them the training. We'll give it in person free. We will give it online free, and that is available. So, all right, just to run through a couple of our numbers. So continue to see growth. I think we added 19 new kids last month, as you'll see in an upcoming slide. Sorry, I know I got to call Scout every time, but I know they're feeling the pinch because I swear I see half the kids go to them each and every month. So you can see we did approve 19 new kids for last month. User logins, we continue to see just kind of adequate, kind of almost I'd say treading water. I'm okay with this, especially as I think we've seen, especially new agencies coming on board. We're seeing a lot less of every member of their department put onto STARS and a little bit more of just generic truck function, especially if they're in a place where the dispatching system is in place. So I kind of feel like with those generic truck accounts, you're not going to see nearly as many logins. So, but people are still getting it in and accessing the forms, and we're thankful for that. And as you can see, we continue to have our dispatch agencies there. Jeffco, if you could just buy your powers combined, I could give you a win here on the top. So, but thank you guys, especially as we see that both trucks that log in just each and every day to be ready, and then the dispatch agencies who are keeping it logged in every day. Just a reminder, I know I talked about this last month, but I don't think I quite had reps from all my dispatch agencies on. I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that we do have a report we can run for the dispatch agencies that want to flag addresses, where we can run a list specific to you and the kids we have listed in your area, so that you can both flag the address, and actually, even if you want, you can just copy a link of the STARS URL if you want to add that as part of the pre-note for that home. And then that quickly will allow somebody to click on it and just access the form. All right, emergency activations were up a little bit for up just a little bit for last month for people who just logged in and said, yes, I'm accessing for an emergency. And then dispatches were actually just about the same as last year, but down a little bit from May. So hopefully that's because some of our kids were getting out of town. I know that they were actually, because we were calling places in Florida while they were traveling. So we did have 26 transports for the month of June. Other than that, so most of these, actually a decent number of these were patients who presented to outside critical access facilities and then also got brought in by other agencies or by the transport team. A stat we have not previously kept track of, but something I couldn't help but notice, continues to be that high admission rate for the kiddos when they're transported. I think that probably makes sense, but still something worth keeping an eye on. If you're kind of a chronically ill patient and then you got brought in by EMS, usually, as I think the ED docs describe it, there's a reason to find a reason to admit somebody. So. And then just kind of to close out before we went to open discussion, we are kind of in the stage of the year where we are starting to prioritize improvements for the STARS website. So while I cannot promise everything that anybody might request, it does help inform us, when we're picking between, would it be more important to add this or this, changes that people want to see. So just to give you an example of that, some feedback from my admins or my managers for the STARS agencies is it's a little confusing and clunky when you go to add a new user, but it doesn't automatically add them to your service provider. And so we're trying to fix some things like that. So I was just gonna kind of, as part of open forum or discussion, just kind of throw it out there for different people in different roles. What are some things that would really help the STARS website work better for you as an agency?
Hey, Nick, it's Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie.
I know I've brought it up before, but I'm going to say it again, is if we could have a way that flags the plans as they're updated, like just a little icon or something that lets us know this plan has been changed. I know we get a notification when a new plan comes through, but we don't always get a notification when there's a change. And so that would be very helpful for us.
Okay. So yeah, I know that one sort of sits, there's sort of like a bundle that fit kind of into that category of like improved communication, right? So I know it kind of sits there on that list of whether it's, hey, you have a new plan pending, or that's been submitted, which I think was another request we had from you at one point. So I appreciate it. Like I said, if that's higher priority than some other things. One thing I was going to ask, especially for my EMS agencies, I am curious if this would work for you, and you might have to consult your IT, but single sign-on is really something that comes up a lot. And I know that would work great for the hospital systems. I was curious if that would work for my EMS agencies. Like if we just had, like if you have some sort of Microsoft account already for all of your employees anyways, and there's, through Active Directory, we can just have it be the same login through STARS.
So that would be great for us. You'd have to coordinate it with our IT department for permissions and stuff, but we have a huge number of users and single sign-on would be enormous.
Okay.
Hey, Nick, what do you guys do at Glennon right now when the plans are updated? Do you notify the EMS agencies or only if there's big changes, or is there no notification at all?
Yeah, so usually only if there's big changes. Patients moving is actually a common one. That's actually probably the most common reason I have to reach out and let people know that a kid switched districts or moved around. I think that this is something there's probably unfortunately some variance between the plan writers. I know Trish is very good at communicating, and she probably would tell you that in person right now, but she lost her voice, so she's sick at home. So yeah, probably varies a lot. If it's just little, like if I'm just changing seizure meds, I do not notify everybody. But if there's significant changes, I do. Sorry, just to circle back to single sign-on, just in case anybody here didn't know what that is. So that is just where instead of you having that login of johndoe@starsprogram.org, you would just be able to use whatever login you use to log into your agency. So for instance, Lindsay Kluge's @djc.org, which fortunately I probably messed that up, so I didn't just give your email address out. But anyways,
That's okay. Anyone can email me at any time.
And so you would just be able to log in with your credentials that you use for your everyday work. That would also get you into STARS. And the other thing, I think reason that people want that the most is then your password would just follow your single sign-on. So whatever you're using for your agency would also get you into STARS, and you wouldn't have to do as much password updating separately on the STARS site. So.
That would be a huge benefit. I know our ER log, I mostly use our ER login, but they sometimes have a hard time with the frequent password updates because I think it's like every 3 months right now, right?
Yeah, it's every 90 days currently. So cool. Awesome. Well, it sounds like single sign-on might be a hit. We'll pass that along. Excellent. All right. Were any other suggestions or questions on things to change? Yeah, and then as Trish just kind of reiterated in chat there, just we do see a lot of moves, you know, for either transient families or especially our kids currently in daycare and foster who are moving around a lot. Unfortunately, it seems like there's a trend towards closing some of their long-term care facilities, and so that's sort of where that room for improvement story came from. Was that was a kid who had been moved out of another long-term facility that had closed down, and they found a place to house them, but it turns out that the facility that received them was probably not well trained to handle their condition. So. Let's see. Thank you for reminding me of that, Stephanie. I knew there was a reason why you guys had that request. Cool. Awesome. Well, I know it's a little bit short here on this July, so that's all I had for content for today. I will gladly stay on and take any extra questions, but for everybody else, I hope you will forgive me for giving you 10 minutes of your day back.
Hey, Nick, I want to say one more thing. We just did our 4th drowning in the last 2 weeks. So if anybody has drowning PR for their districts, now is probably the time to do it.
Yeah, that's always a sad one. Yeah, I think especially, and if your district doesn't have any drowning PR, please let us know. We have, I think, especially through our trauma team, and Josh could probably answer that better than me. But I believe we have both some education and probably some resources available to share with districts, to share with their residents. So.
And I'm always happy to do drowning PR. We have kind of like a toolkit that that I can send out if anyone needs anything, just with resources. Because at Children's, we've had the same this summer. I think we've had more drownings than in the last few years for sure.
Lindsay, it's Stephanie. Can you send that to me, please?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Cool. I'm gonna stop the recording.